All right, so, that feeling, right, when something just seems off, like it doesn't add up well. Today, we're looking into a case that's been bugging us for a while, a situation up in Hancock County, Maine, that feels exactly like that.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher for sure. And the thing is, it goes all the way back to 2013, but here we are in 2025 still trying to figure out what exactly happened.
It's the case of Daniel Joy and the fact that he was allegedly involved in stealing guns from a police evidence room over a decade ago.
3 guns, to be exact. And to this day, despite those allegations, he hasn't seemed to face any real consequences for it.
Nope, not that we can see, and we've really dug into this one. We've been combing through local news reports, especially from the Ellsworth American.
Yeah.
But we've also been paying close attention to what folks are saying online. All that citizen journalism and commentary, because let's be honest, sometimes that's where you get the real
You're
story.
right. And a lot of that online chatter is pointing to some pretty serious potential corruption happening at the local level.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going deep today, a deep dive into this whole thing. We want to break down the timeline, figure out why this case seems to have stalled, and really try to grasp what this might tell us about how justice is actually served up in Hancock County.
So to kick things off, we need to go back to 2013. That's where this story starts.
Back when cassette tapes were making a comeback, right?
Haha. Yeah, something like that. But no, seriously, this is when Daniel Joy enters the picture. He had connections to the Bucksport Police Department.
He's a busy guy.
He was a patrolman for a bit, then moved over to animal control, and then even worked as a dispatcher for that same department. It seems like he wore a lot of hats.
So we're talking about someone who's pretty embedded in the local law enforcement scene, right?
Absolutely. And it's during this time that he allegedly gets his hands on 3 firearms that had been turned over to the police. The kind people surrender for whatever reason.
And this is where things get a little fuzzy, right? Because this wasn't some big headline-grabbing bust. It took a while for this whole thing to even come to light.
Yeah. Well, talking 7 years later in 2020, the person who originally surrendered those guns wanted them back pretty straightforward, right?
Makes sense. You turn something in, you expect to be able to get it back, especially if you've got the paperwork to prove it.
Exactly, and that's where things get interesting. This person actually had a receipt for those guns, a receipt signed by none other than Daniel Joy.
Ah, so now we've got direct link.
Bingo, and because of this newfound evidence, Daniel Joy was officially charged with Class B theft in October of 2020.
Okay, now Class B theft, that sounds serious.
It is in Maine that kind of charge can land you in some deep water. We're talking a potential sentence of up to 10 years behind bars and a hefty fine, $10,000 to be exact.
Wow, so this wasn't some slap on the wrist kind of offense.
No, not at all. This was a pretty big deal, and the timeline seems pretty clear-cut: right theft in 2013, discovery and charges in 2020. But here's where it gets really weird.
Lay it on me.
It's 2025. 5 years have passed since those charges were filed. And as far as we can tell, Daniel Joy hasn't been prosecuted, hasn't been arrested, hasn't even been booked.
Wait, hold on, so nothing happened?
That seems to be the case, and that's where all those whispers about influence and a potential cover-up start to get really loud.
Right, because how else do you explain this kind of inaction, especially with a serious charge like that? I mean, you steal a candy bar, maybe you get a warning, but 3 guns from a police evidence locker, you'd think that would have some real consequences.
And that's where this idea of a good old boys club comes in. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot in these online forums and discussions about Hancock County.
The good old boys club. Paint me a picture. What are we talking about here?
Well, the way it's described, it's like this unspoken network of powerful figures, maybe in law enforcement, the courts, maybe even extending to the local media who are all looking out for each other.
So you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of deal.
Yeah, basically. And the implication is that they prioritize protecting their own, even if it means bending or breaking the rules. And Daniel Joy, well, he seems to be a card-carrying member of this alleged club.
And his alleged close friendship with Bucksport's police chief, David Winchester?
Uh-huh.
That seems to be a key piece of this puzzle, right?
Absolutely. People are pointing to that relationship as a major reason why this case has gone nowhere. It's like this unspoken agreement to sweep things under the rug.
So basically, if you're part of this club, the rules don't really apply to you. Is that what we're getting at here?
It seems that way, and it goes even deeper. Some folks are claiming that the local newspaper, the Ellsworth American, well, they're in on it too.
Really? How so?
The accusation is that they downplay or completely ignore stories that could make this good old boys club look bad. They're protecting their own image and the image of their buddies.
So it's like this whole system is rigged in their favor.
Mhm.
A good old boys network that controls the narrative and ensures that certain people never really face music.
And the disturbing thing is, based on what we've seen, this isn't an isolated incident. There are allegations of similar situations happening in the past involving other members of this alleged club. It's like a pattern.
So what's the playbook here? How do they allegedly make these things disappear?
It's all about controlling the information and playing the long game, from what we're gathering. They try to keep the initial reporting on these incidents as quiet as possible. No big headlines, no public outcry.
Keep it out of the spotlight so nobody notices.
Exactly. Then they drag out the legal process for as long as possible, hoping that people will forget and move on.
And if the case does somehow make it to court, what happens then?
Well, that's when the real show allegedly begins. They call it a kangaroo court, where the outcome is basically predetermined.
Okay, so not exactly a fair trial then.
Not by a long shot, and the specifics get even wilder. There are claims about the use of what they call fake jurors.
Fake jurors, what does that even mean?
It sounds crazy, right? But the way it's described is that they allegedly stack the jury with people who are easily swayed, or maybe not the sharpest tools in the shed, the type.
Okay, so not exactly a jury of your peers, then more like a jury of people they can manipulate.
And it gets worse. Some people are even saying that there's this one individual, a specific person, who appears as a juror in multiple trials, almost like a professional fake juror.
Are you serious? Like a plant?
That's what they're saying. And get this, there are accounts from jail trustees who claim to have seen this same person serving on juries in different cases.
So we're talking about potentially fabricated trials rigged from the start.
That's the implication, and it all adds up to this deeply unsettling picture of a two-tiered justice system in Hancock County.
One for the elites,
Yeah.
the good old boys club, and another one for everyone else.
Precisely, and the fact that Daniel Joy still hasn't been prosecuted, even though he was charged 5 years ago in 2020, that just reinforces this whole idea that some people are above the law.
And it's not just this gun theft case either, right? There are other allegations swirling around Daniel Joy from his time as a patrolman.
You're talking about the alleged incident with a minor?
Yeah, that's the one reportedly some sort of inappropriate encounter that led to him leaving that position. But then again, it seems like nothing really came of it.
It's claimed that his friends intervened, and the whole thing was quietly settled out of court.
So another example of potential misconduct being swept under the rug.
That's the narrative, and it's important to note that some of the commentary we've seen is pretty harsh on the Bucksport Police Department as a whole. Some people are straight up calling it corrupt.
Wow, so there's a lot of distrust there, a feeling that the whole system is compromised.
Absolutely. So, given all these allegations and the fact that we're 5 years out from those charges with no sign of any movement in the case, what have the authorities said about all this?
Well, not much from what we can gather. Police Chief David Winchester has reportedly declined to comment on the gun theft case. He's basically deflected all questions to the district attorney's office.
And what about the DA?
Well, a representative from the DA's office, Matt Foster, did acknowledge the theft back in 2020. He confirmed that the case was under review and even mentioned the types of firearms that were stolen, a shotgun, a rifle, and a handgun.
Okay, so at least there was some recognition that something had happened.
But that was 5 years ago, and since then, radio silence.
So the big question remains, why has there been no apparent action taken against Daniel Joy?
It's been over a decade since the alleged theft. 5 years since the charges were filed, and nothing. It's like this case is stuck in limbo, and it really highlights this central issue we keep coming back to. The law just doesn't seem to apply in this situation.
And some are accusing the district attorney's office of essentially dropping the ball, of neglecting their duty, especially given the rumors of a close relationship between the DA and Daniel Joy.
So friendship over justice, that's the accusation.
Yeah, and this lack of progress only fuels that perception that there's a different set of rules for certain people in Hancock County.
All right, so let's recap. We've got the alleged theft in 2013, the discovery and charges in 2020, and now it's 2025, and Daniel Joy is still walking free. No trial, no consequences.
And the citizen journalists, those folks who have been following this case closely, they're pretty convinced that this isn't just a coincidence. They're pointing to this good old boys club as the reason why Daniel Joy seems to be untouchable.
Like he's got a get out of jail free card.
Exactly. And it all circles back to this fundamental question. Does the principle of equal justice under the law actually exist in Hancock County, or is it all just a facade?
Right, because if these allegations are true, if there really is this two-tiered system where some people are shielded from the law while others are punished to the fullest extent, then what does that say about our justice system?
It's a troubling thought, and the case of Daniel Joy with its years of inaction and unanswered questions, well, it becomes a symbol of that potential injustice.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What happens when the very people who are supposed to uphold the law are the ones allegedly manipulating it for their own benefit?
It erodes trust, it creates a sense of cynicism, and it leaves you questioning whether justice is truly blind or whether it's peeking through the blindfold and playing favorites.
It's a question that lingers long after the headlines fade, a question that we all need to grapple with, because if these allegations hold any truth, then it's not just about one man in Hancock County, it's about the integrity of our entire system.
And what can we as citizens do to demand accountability, to ensure that justice is served fairly and impartially for everyone?
That's the question. We're left with a question that deserves our attention and our action, because the pursuit of justice shouldn't be a game of connections and privilege. It should be a right guarantee to all.
And that's something worth fighting for.